Crafter, welcome to this week's Friday Crochet. Today we are going to be learning how to do the V-stitch. I'm going to be showing two different versions of this. The first is a version where it's worked evenly, and the second is where it's worked offset. This is a great pattern, and I just think it's such a pretty texture. So like I did in last week's video, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of the pattern, and then I will break it down slowly step by step so you can clearly see how to work this pattern. Let's start off by talking about what stitches you need to know. Fortunately, this one only calls for 2 stitches, namely the chain stitch and the double crochet. I am using US terminology, so a chain stitch is pretty standard. Double crochet is when you yarn over before starting the stitch. As far as what hook and yarn I'm using, I'm actually not sure what kind of yarn this is, but I'm using a size H 5mm hook. As with last week's pattern, you can use whatever yarn you want to use and then just use an appropriate hook size for that yarn. So let's talk through these patterns. The first one I'm going to show is the V-stitch worked evenly. With this stitch, we're going to create a border on it. I do 2 double crochet on each end to create a border. And we're going to have these V's that are made up of a double crochet, a chain, and then another double crochet. And we're going to work them across. In each row, we're going to work the V's nestled against each other. So if we look here, this is a V from one row, this is a V in the next row, this is a V in the next row, and you can see how they all kind of stack. Same over here, this is a V, this is a V, this is a V, and this is a V, and they're all just kind of stacked in the middle of each other. For our second version, which I'm calling the alternating method, we're going to work our V-stitches, but we're not going to have that border. One end will start with a V-stitch, and the other end will end with just a double crochet standing upright. And our V-stitches, instead of being directly within each other, they're going to shift side to side each row. So if we look here, this is a V-stitch, this is a V-stitch shifted to the right, then this is one shifted to the left, shifted to the right, shifted to the left, and so on and so forth. Fortunately, both of these work up with nice square even edges if you want to sew them together for making clothing, or if you want to assemble it into something else. It's really nice because you'll have even edges. So let's start off with learning how to do the even V-stitch. I'm going to start by putting a slip knot on my crochet hook, and we're going to start with a chain. For this first method, we need to crochet a multiple of 3 and then an additional 6 stitches. I do an additional 6 stitches because this allows me to have 2 double crochet border on all my sides. If you want to have just 1 double crochet border on each side, you will want to subtract 2, so you'll do the multiple of 3 plus 4. And if you want to do more than that, you'll need to add an additional stitch for every stitch of your border. So when I say a multiple of 3 plus an additional 6 stitches, I'm going to think about how many V-stitches I want. I'm going to do 5 going across, so I'm going to do 5 times 3, or a total of 15 chains. So 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. So that's 2 times 3. 1, 2, 3. That's 3 times 3. 1, 2, 3, that's 4 times, and 1, 2, and 3. So I'm doing a multiple of 3, I'm doing 5 times 3, and then I need to do an additional 6 stitches. So we're going to chain 6 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right, so our first row is going to be our setup row, and then the rest of our rows are going to repeat. So we're going to start by turning our work, and in the 4th chain from our hook, we're going to work a double crochet. So yarn over, count back 1, 2, 3, 4, and in that 4th stitch right there, work a double crochet. We're going to count these 3 chains as a double crochet, and of course this is a double crochet, so this is our 2 double crochet border to make it even. And then we're going to start our repeating pattern across. We're going to skip 1 chain, and in the following chain, we're going to work what I'm calling the V-stitch. The V-stitch is made up of a double crochet, a chain, and a double crochet. So I'm going to skip this following stitch, and in that 2nd stitch, I'm going to work a double crochet, chain 1, and in the same stitch, work another double crochet. And then I'm going to skip a stitch. We're going to repeat that pattern, skip a stitch and work a V-stitch. So basically between every V-stitch, we're going to skip 2 chain stitches. So skip 1, skip 2, and in that 3rd one, I'm going to work a double crochet, chain 1, and work a second double crochet in the same spot. As you can see, they're starting to look like a V shape, and we're going to keep repeating this across. I'm going to skip 1, 2 chains, and in the third one, I'm going to double crochet, chain 1, and double crochet again in that same spot. I'm going to keep repeating these V stitches across until I have just a few stitches left in my row. Now once I get down to just 3 stitches left, that's my signal that I'm going to stop doing the V stitches, and I'm going to work my 2 double crochet to make my even border. So to work my 2 double crochet to make my even border, I'm going to skip 1 stitch, and then the last 2 chains of the foundation chain, I'm going to work a double crochet in each of them. So 1 double crochet, and then in the very last stitch, a second double crochet. And that is our first row. I've got the 2 double crochet as a border on each side, and then I have the V stitches, and I have 5 of them. So now it's time for our repeating pattern that we're just going to do over and over and over, and we'll do as many rows as we want to do. We're going to start by chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, and turning our work. That's going to count as our first double crochet. We're just going to count as like the stitch above this first stitch. So then in our second stitch, we're going to work a double crochet. Come in right here and work a double crochet. And now it's time for the repeating part of our pattern. We're going to work a V-stitch within the chain space of the V-stitches from the previous row. So what I mean by that is I'm going to work a double crochet by going right through that big loop there, yarn over, pull up a loop, pull through 2, pull through 2. So that's my first double crochet, then chain 1, and then work a second double crochet in that same spot to complete the V-stitch. So I've worked a V-stitch in the space of the V-stitch from the previous row, and we're just going to keep working that across. So in my next V-stitch in that big chain 1 space, I'm going to work a double crochet, chain 1, and then another double crochet in the same spot. Repeat it again, go to my next V-stitch, work a double crochet in the space created by the chain 1, then chain 1, and work another double crochet in the V-stitch of the previous row. Gonna do it 2 more times. So a V-stitch within the next space from the previous row. So by V-stitch I mean double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Do 1 more V-stitch, so come to my next space, do a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and now I'm done doing the V-stitch working across. Last thing I need to do is I need to work 2 double crochet in my last 2 stitches just to create that even border. Now make sure you don't work in the left post of the V-stitch, so you want to skip that and work in the space right there. A double crochet, and then our second and final double crochet is going to be worked in that top chain of the chain 3 that was our turning chain that we let count as a double crochet stitch. And if we just keep repeating row 2, that will create the even V-stitch pattern like I have here. So now let's work on what I'm calling the alternating V-stitch, where the V's kind of shift back and forth each row. We will want to start with a slip knot on our hook, and we're going to start with our chain. So this time we're going to chain a multiple of 3 and then add an additional 5 stitches. So I'm again going to do 5 multiples of 3, so 15 chain stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, that's my second multiple, 1, 2, 3, third time, 1, 2, 3, fourth time, 1, 2, 3, that's my 5th time. So now I have 15 chain stitches here, and then we need to add an additional 5 chain stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now we're ready to start working across. So as with the even V-stitch, we're going to have kind of a setup row, and then the rest of the rows will be repeating. This pattern essentially starts by creating a little V-stitch, kind of a loop on the right side, and then continuing V-stitches across and ending with a double crochet to make the border even. So to make our essentially first V-stitch, we're going to skip the first 4 chain and work a double crochet in the 5th chain from our hook. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's my 5th one there, and in that chain I'm going to work a double crochet. So essentially what we have here is we have this loop that has 4 chains and then a double crochet. So if we think about the first 3 chains as a double crochet, then we have that 4th chain, which is like our chain space, and then a double crochet, we've essentially created a V-stitch like we were doing before. So now it's time for our repeating pattern, which is very similar to how we set up the even V-stitch. So I'm going to skip 2 chain spaces, 1, 2, and in that 3rd one, I'm going to work a V-stitch. So remember, the V-stitch is working a double crochet, a chain 1, and then a double crochet in that same spot. We're going to repeat that where we skip 1, 2 chains, and in the 3rd chain, we are going to work a V-stitch, which is a double crochet, chain 1, and a double crochet. And we're going to keep repeating this across our chains. Skip 2, and the 3rd one, work a V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, skip 2, work a V-stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then skip 2 and work a double crochet in our last stitch. So that's our setup row, and our V-stitches are going to kind of have a little bit of a lean to them just because we're making this V-stitch here on the end kind of square up. So now it's time to do our repeating row. What we want to do is start by chaining 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, then turn our work, and in this first stitch here, we're going to work a double crochet. So come right in there and work a double crochet stitch. And that chain 4 with the double crochet is going to be like our first V-stitch. Now, we're not going to be working in the chain spaces. Instead, what we're going to do is skip the next double crochet, skip the next chain, and in the following stitch, work a V-stitch. So basically, it's like the left post of the V-stitch. That left double crochet, we're going to come in the top of it and work a V-stitch. So in that spot, we will work a double crochet, then chain 1, and then double crochet. Skip the next 2 stitches, so that double crochet, skip it, skip the chain, and then in the following double crochet, the left side of the V-stitch from the previous row, we're going to work a double crochet, chain 1, double crochet to create a V-stitch, and we're just going to keep repeating this process across. So skip the next 2 stitches, in the 3rd stitch, work a V-stitch, my chain, and then a double crochet. Skip the next 2 stitches, work a V-stitch, so double crochet, chain 1, double crochet, and then we're going to work 1 double crochet at the end to even it up. We want to work it in the 3rd chain here. So there's 2 ways you can think of it. You can count from the bottom and count up 1, 2, 3. This will be my 3rd one here, and I can work in there. Or if you want to think of it a different way, you can skip this double crochet, skip a chain, and then work in the following chain. Either way, you're going to end up at the same place, but once you find that chain, work a double crochet stitch in it. And that's going to square up our edges. And now we're going to have this nice V-stitch where they kind of alternate back and forth each row. We're just going to keep repeating what we did on row 2 as many times as you want to get your project as big as you want it to be. But that's 2 ways to work the V-stitch. I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you're going to use this in a project, I'd love if you'd share how you're going to use this pattern in your project, so you can let me know that in the comments below. I appreciate you watching my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and make sure you come back next week for another Crochet Friday. Happy crafting!